Now let us see the osteology of clavicle. Clavicle, it is a type of long bone. It is also called collarbone. It has medial end, a shaft and a lateral end. Medial end connects with manubrium sterni. Lateral end is connected with acromion process of scapula. Now let us see the features of each part of this clavicle. Medial end, shaft and lateral end. Medial end. Medial end or sternal end, it is quadrangular and it articulates with the clavicular notch of the manubrium sterni to form sternoclavicular joint. This is the lateral end or acromial end. It is flattened from above downwards. It bears a facet that articulates with the acromion process of scapula to form acromioclavicular joint. This is the shaft of the scapula. This is placed like superior surface facing upwards. This is the medial 2/3 of the shaft. This is lateral 1/3 of the shaft. Now let us see the features of lateral 1/3 of the shaft. It consists of anterior border, posterior border, superior surface and inferior surface. This is the inferior surface. Anterior border is concave anteriorly. Posterior border is convex posteriorly. The superior surface of lateral 1/3 of this clavicle is subcutaneous and inferior surface consists of two features. This is the conoid tubercle. This is the conoid tubercle. This is the conoid tubercle, whereas this is the trapezoid ridge. This is the medial 2/3 of the shaft. It consists of four surfaces and it is rounded. It consists of four surfaces. Anterior surface, it is convex forwards. Posterior surface, it is concave backward, and superior surface is rough and inferior surface is also rough. The lateral half of the medial 2/3 of the clavicle exhibits a groove called subclavian groove, and the nutrient foramen lies lateral to this subclavian groove. Now let us see the ligaments attached to this clavicle. There are two ligaments. It is costoclavicular ligament and coracoclavicular ligaments. First let us see the coracoclavicular ligament. Coracoclavicular ligament consists of two parts, trapezoid part and conoid part. This is the coracoclavicular ligament, which is attached between lateral 1/3 of clavicle and coracoid process of scapula, and it consists of two parts, conoid part and trapezoid part. Conoid part connects with conoid tubercle and the coracoid process. Trapezoid part is connected with trapezoid ridge of clavicle with the coracoid process of scapula. Whereas this is the costoclavicular ligament, which is attached with the costal cartilage of the first rib and the medial surface of the clavicle. Medial 2/3 of the clavicle and its inferior surface, this costoclavicular ligament is attached. So it consists of two ligaments, coracoclavicular ligament, which consists of two parts, trapezoid and conoid part, and the costoclavicular ligament. Now let us see the attachment of muscles of the clavicle. Deltoid muscle is attached to the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle anteriorly. See, here you can see this is the clavicle and this is the anterior border of lateral 1/3 of clavicle, and the deltoid muscle is attached to the lateral 1/3 of this clavicle. So lateral 1/3 of the clavicle anterior border is connected to deltoid. Medial 2/3 of the clavicle's anterior border is connected to pectoralis major, whereas the posterior border of medial part is connected to sternocleidomastoid. Posteriorly, lateral 1/3 of the clavicle is attached to trapezius muscle, and inferiorly it is connected to subclavius muscle. The inferior surface of shaft is connected to the subclavius muscle. Now let us see the points. Clavicle, this is a type of long bone, and the other name is collarbone, and the location is, it is located on either side of the neck, which connects the trunk with the upper limb. Special features include, it is the only long bone that lies horizontally, it is subcutaneous throughout, it is the first bone to start ossifying, it is the only long bone which ossifies first, and there is no medullary cavity. It is the only bone that has two primary centers. It is occasionally pierced by the middle supraclavicular nerve. And the normal features include medial end. I already said that medial or sternal end is quadrangular, and it articulates with the clavicular notch of the manubrium sterni to form sternoclavicular joint. And the articular surface extends to the inferior aspect for articulation with the first costal cartilage. An anatomical position, anteriorly medial 2/3 is convex and lateral 1/3 is concave. And the shaft. Shaft is divisible into lateral 1/3 and the medial 2/3. Lateral 1/3 of the shaft is flattened from above downwards. It has two borders, anterior and posterior. And it consists of, anterior border is concave and posterior border is convex. It has two surfaces, superior, which is subcutaneous. Inferior contains elevation called conoid tubercle and trapezoid ridge. And the medial 2/3 of the shaft is rounded and consists of four surfaces. Anterior, which is convex forward, posterior, which is concave backward, superior is rough and inferior is rough. And inferior surface contains oval impression at the medial end. The lateral half of the surface has a longitudinal subclavian groove. The nutrient foramen lies at the lateral end of this groove. Lateral end or acromial end is flattened from above downwards. It bears a facet that articulates with the acromion process of the scapula to form acromioclavicular joint. And the muscle attachments. Lateral 1/3 deltoid muscle anteriorly, trapezius posteriorly, medial 2/3 sternocleidomastoid superiorly and subclavius inferiorly, pectoralis major anteriorly and sternohyoid posteriorly. Ligaments include trapezoid part and conoid part forms coracoclavicular ligament. Rough impression at the sternal end form costoclavicular ligament. And the applied anatomy. Clavicle commonly gets fractured at the paired function in between the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. Once let us see the clavicle through diagrams. And this is the sternal end, this is the sternal end, and this is the acromial end. And this is the attachment, this forms acromioclavicular joint, and this forms sternoclavicular joint. And this is the anterior border, this is the posterior border, this is the superior surface, and this is the inferior surface. The anterior border of lateral 1/3 and this is the posterior border of lateral 1/3. This is the superior surface. This is the inferior surface. Inferior surface consists of conoid part and trapezoid part. It consists of conoid tubercle and trapezoid ridge. And this is the medial 2/3 of the shaft. This is the anterior surface, this is the posterior surface. This is the medial 2/3 of the clavicle. This is the anterior border, posterior border, superior surface and inferior surface. And the anterior surface of the medial 2/3 gives rise to pectoralis major. Posterior surface gives rise to sternohyoid. Superior surface gives rise to sternocleidomastoid muscle. And the inferior surface of the medial 2/3 of the shaft consists of subclavian groove, which gives rise to subclavius muscle. And the borders of this subclavian groove gives rise to clavipectoral fascia. And the lateral part of this subclavian groove gives rise to contains nutrient foramen. And the ligaments include coracoclavicular ligament laterally, costoclavicular ligament medially. Coracoclavicular ligament consists of true parts, trapezoid and conoid part. Lateral 1/3 deltoid muscle anteriorly, trapezius posteriorly, pectoralis major, medial 2/3 sternocleidomastoid superiorly, subclavius inferiorly, and the pectoralis major anteriorly, sternohyoid posteriorly. Consists of two primary centers and one secondary center and two secondary centers. And applied anatomy include clavicular dysostosis, Cleidocranial dysostosis. Clavicular dysostosis means medial and lateral parts remain separated due to non-union of two primary centers. And cleidocranial dysostosis include partial or complete absence of clavicle due to defect in transmembranous ossification. So this is the osteology of clavicle. Thank you.